Yes, we want to know. Hello.
Do you think we'll find out eventually?
I don't know. It's every week. It seems like it's asking whether, but not listening to our response.
It's taunting us.
It's kind of rude that never then takes our response and then gives us the more information because we do want to know.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the latest episode of the Project Failure Files. This series for anyone who manages people, projects, processes, cats, llamas, goats, whatever you want to call it, for a living. I am Sharon Weaver, CEO of Smarter Consulting.
And I am Christian Buckley, founder of Collab Talk, and welcome to another episode of our series where Sharon and I explore management and leadership topics from the perspective of what not to do.
So today we're going to talk about a classic pitfall that every organization faces at some point. Relying on memory alone. Nobody ever does that.
Yeah.
It's basically the habit that's assuming people are going to remember, what they did last time, what worked, what didn't work, what they learned, without ever needing to document it or write it down.
Yep.
We all tell ourselves, I'll put it later. I'll document it later. I'll jot that down later. Maybe we'll do a lesson learned session. Like we always tell ourselves that. But then you go to bed and you're tired and you wake up and you do the project and the next thing starts and then it's just gone and it evaporates.
It's a rinse and repeat. No, I remember that you get to the end of the next project and you're like, oh yeah, last time we had this same problem. We should document that again. That you don't, and then it repeats itself.
Totally write that down this time.
It's that famous, I think we did something like this on the last project. That whole conversation. It's always followed by pretty much silence while everyone tries to remember what actually happened on that last project because you didn't document anything.
Or to be relevant, like now everybody goes quiet because they turn to Copilot and they're like, what did I do on the last project?
That's right. AI will just do that for us, won't it? Yeah.
I don't know that it's always right, but it will.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's amazing how much amazing, valuable experience completely vanishes just because teams don't take the time to write things down. We don't capture lessons learned properly, and definitely don't really create a process for sharing the knowledge.
Yeah, it's it's not because people don't want to learn. It's that when a project wraps up, generally everybody's ready to move on. Other projects overlap. They've already started, and so it just kind of you move your concentration over to that. So deadlines then shift, the focus changes of that, and all those hard-won insights from that project, the things you want to repeat, that you want to get better at, they then just get lost within the shuffle.
Yeah, and ultimately what happens is then the next project team just ends up reinventing the wheel, or worst case, and pretty common actually, is that we just repeat the same mistakes over and over and over until it's so painful that you have to change. But mostly, nobody documents what happened, what went wrong, how to fix it. I really have seen this all over the place. I've just seen it happen so often. And it's very rarely, solved in most places, especially in small teams, fast moving environments where you're just like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And the attitude is generally, we'll remember next time. but spoiler alert, yeah, you never do.
I mean, that's where we always talk about, having a process, repeating the process. And one of the things I know we'll get into and share some experiences about is that I've had leaders that had a very negative attitude towards, like, why are you sitting here documenting this? Like, we need to move faster kind of attitude. But we need to formalize those lessons learned. We always talk about the favorite aspects of a project is that post-mortem, learning about going back and assessing what went right, what went wrong, what can we do better, and then change and make that change transparent. That's where real learning happens within a team. You don't just rush past it and onto the next project. When organizations build systems for capturing and sharing this and revisiting those insights that they're talking about, it's part of the dialogue. It's part of the operating model. We review this, we discuss it, we improve on that, and revisit those insights regularly. It becomes part of the culture, not just an afterthought to the project.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be complicated either. Sometimes it's as easy as just a quick meeting, quick covering it at the end of a project, maybe a shared workspace where people can post, hey, by the way, this worked, this didn't work. I want to, write it down for later. It doesn't have to be like some fancy, gigantic all-day workshop for it to be successful.
No, it can be something as simple as, it's one of the reasons I became a huge fan of back in the day of Yammer, now Viva Engage, because it can be a very lightweight, that social collaboration. You can use Slack to do that, use Teams to do that, where it's a place where people can informally capture and you almost build kind of an informal FAQs, but we're getting into solution stuff here. But the key is to be consistent. Knowledge only becomes an asset when it's shared and accessible. It's not enough that you document it. People have to be able to find that again. How are you, accessing it, getting to this information, and it's not locked up inside of somebody's head?
Yeah, I actually have an entire session that I do around this on a regular basis around tacit knowledge.
Yeah, that's right. I've seen that session.
And one of the main key points that I have in that session is that leaders need to reward people for those behaviors. They need to do it, because if people know that their documentation, their feedback, all of that matters, they're far more likely to contribute.
Folks, we're just at the intro here. We've not even gotten into the meat of this yet. But as always, should be an interesting conversation. And please do feel free to comment throughout, share how your team captures their lessons learned, maybe what happens when they don't, if you've got stories. If there's something else that we seem to gloss past very quickly and you think we should spend more time on, let us know in the comments. We'd be happy to interact with you. And
tell us what went wrong. We really want to know what went. Honestly, Christian and I really dig that, because then we laugh behind the scenes about all the amazing feedback. So definitely tell us what went wrong. Okay, let's get started with some definitions.
I think that this concept of the relying on memory alone, it really describes this dangerous assumption that the lessons learned, the things that we fixed, that we patched up, the actions we took, the insights from a project, that they naturally get through osmosis somehow improve within the team. But the problem is, having worked in PMOs and large, project-centric organizations, I know in consulting it's the same way. I'm not paying attention to what's happening on all the other projects that other people are leading around me. Unless it's discussed, unless there's in the moment, it carries over, it's lost. So that's why I said you're maybe remembering your memory of things, of lessons learned in the people that were there in the project. None of that translates sideways into other project managers, other leaders.
Yeah, I think, from a behavioral aspect, we're just trying to get to the end of the day, right? We're just trying to get our stuff done. We prioritize the things that are quick hitters. And at the end of the day, we're just trying to be done, right? We're trying to get all of the stuff that we said we would do and get to the end of the day. And often what ends up happening is, and I talk a lot about, people say, I didn't have time for that. And my answer to that is you didn't prioritize it, right? And so what ends up happening is if you have a small team and this is not prioritized, then what ends up happening is now all of a sudden, you've got all this great things like you were talking about, we learned it, we did it, but we never really make the time for it. And so, we get down the road and it's like, oh yeah, we never did that. Oh yeah, we never did that. Oh yeah, we never did that. So this whole definition around this topic is we did the thing, but we didn't value the experience and the knowledge and the information out of it enough to prioritize doing something about that knowledge.
Something is not done until it's been properly documented. Here's a case in point. Early in my career, we're already getting to story time here, Sharon. Early in my career, I was working for EDS, and so I was a technical writer, then a business analyst.
Oh, this should be a good story.
And part of my job was to work with the engineering team, and mostly COBOL programmers, so super exciting, super sexy engineering jobs that ended up paying incredibly well for the people that could tolerate it, to stick around in it. Anyway, not to belittle people that have that knowledge. I'm just like, hey, I wish I had that knowledge and could charge $300-400 an hour for my skills. But my job was to go and sit with the engineers to document the work that they were doing. And what I learned pretty quick, I'd say the first week on the job, is that it took more time for me and for them for me to try to understand what they're doing and document it properly, then they could have just jotted down their notes in the first place. And as I, spent years within the space, and I worked for a couple organizations where they required their engineers, like they put their code in, and it wasn't done. It wasn't counted unless it wasn't considered done. And that engineer was not let off the hook until the proper documentation was in place. I love that process because it forced a couple things. One, it forced them to go back, look at their code. And this is a leadership management topic, not just coders, but stick with me here. It forced them to go back and relook at it. They often found errors before it even was done and live. And so it forced them to be more thoughtful about that and to also express, here's what I was trying to do. And so it was a better handoff because there was the code, there was a description of that, like the process, the logic there, the solution architecture that they were working around. It just was a full package so that somebody came in and could much more quickly understand what's going on, check it, validate that, and also better understand here's what was intended and here's where it's going. The truth, I mean, it's true with project management, with leadership. If you document, here's what we did, here's what went right, here's what went wrong, here's the process we followed and the changes we made and why, you're able to improve upon that. So it might be faster, the quality may be higher of that. There might be better, more insights out of that, more data that we're able to see. It improves everything along the way. A little bit of pain and uncomfort by writing, by documenting, goes a long way.
But you don't understand, Christian. People don't like to write things down and they don't like to document.
That's true.
Except for you like writing.
Of course. Every time, though, a team says, we'll remember that for the next time, I know what's coming because we won't remember. Human memory is terrible at retaining context. If you don't capture lessons learned while they're fresh, they fade fast and your next project becomes a rerun of preventable mistakes.
Yeah, I'm ready to talk about solutions, but let's keep talking about this before we get to solutions.
Yeah. Well, Sharon, I don't know if you've ever done the use. So my team, past team, they hated when I would bring up and say, it's like training a puppy. You can't, like, you leave the puppy for a few hours, you come back, and at some point, the puppy did its business on the carpet. Do you go and smack the puppy like that? And it's like, no. You have to, if you're there and actively watching that, you see the the puppy squatting in the middle of the living room, and you go and kind of, smack him on the nose, like, no, scare him, and then put him outside for the ride. That's how they learn, like in the moment, that lesson learned.
Yeah, you definitely got to remind them and make sure that they know to do it. But yeah, and so I think, part of this is, we talked about prioritizing this, right? Prioritizing the need to write things down and to document things and to track knowledge in general, because ultimately, we talk a lot about tech debt, right? There's this conversation about tech debt, and tech debt is the idea where basically there's all this stuff that hasn't gotten done technologically, right? So from a development perspective, from a code perspective, but I think there really is this idea of knowledge debt too, right? And so we think about this idea of that we've done all the work, we've learned all the lessons, but now we've taken that and we've not done anything with it. And so what's happening is, instead of generating the interest from, taking the value out of those lessons learned, we're now creating knowledge debt for the next group, where they're going to have to come in and they're going to have to relearn it and pay for things again that have really already been paid for multiple times over.
Yeah. Sharon, have you ever worked in an organization that wanted to turn like project management, this whole activity into, like a, well, it's a cost center. I mean, it's for the organization, but they wanted to create like a chargeback model for the services. Have you never worked in an org that tried that?
Not in that particular way. I will tell you, I know I worked in an organization one time that, honestly, I thought this was brilliant. One of their Six Sigma projects was that we did this whole initiative around lessons learned, and every lesson learned from every project. So basically systematize the whole thing. So at the end of every project, they had to fill out like a form and all of that. All of that was then put into a lesson learned archive for every project. And you were required to go basically, review that prior to every project. They did not institute, as far as I know, they didn't institute like a chargeback around the model, but what they did is they provided it as a general service to everybody in the organization. And I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, there's been some, and I know I can go sideways on this topic, but my first software startup that I sold off back in 2001, so a while back, but was around looking at pattern recognition within project management, and that idea of, okay, we're producing 20 product a month, whatever the thing is. How can we get to 22 a month or 25 a month? Where can we see some efficiencies? Where can we, without burning people out, kind of all the other factors, how do we stick to our budget, to our people, keep everybody healthy and happy, but do more? You improve process. You improve, like you think of it like the manufacturing process, get more things up, more product out on the assembly line at the other side. Where can we make improvements? Where do we have that technical debt where we can learn from that and then make the changes, test out the changes, and then improve, go forward? I like the idea of this too, of the whole unpaid tuition idea. The relying on memory alone is like paying tuition for a class that you never attend. You've already spent the time, the money, the frustration to learn something, but if you don't write it down, you never cash in on the value of that lesson.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And essentially you end up with all of the stuff that's over there that you don't get any value out of, and you're not using the applied skills from.
Yep. Well, think about the project and the cultural impacts of not from an individual and a team basis, of not capturing this knowledge and repeating the same mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, that's easy, right? We end up in Groundhog Day, which is kind of how people feel, I think, all the time. It's like this whole, I feel like I'm doing the exact same thing every single day for this, the next thing is just, I did this yesterday, I did the same thing. And ultimately, like, if you're doing everything like wonderfully and you're really happy and efficient with everything, maybe that's not a problem for you. But I would say for the vast majority of people, what ends up happening is the other way around, where you kind of like, why can I not do this right? Why do I have this groundhog feeling of doing it over and over and over, but I just can't quite make it do what I want it to do?
There needs to be a meta description for referring to Groundhog Day. Like, I feel like we talk about Groundhog Day all the time. Well, it's got to be, it's that next layer up of deja vu. So we're
Yeah.
mentioning the specific movie. Yeah. But
I do think when when you have the same mistakes over and over and over, though, because you haven't corrected them, you haven't fixed them, you haven't changed them, you haven't made them better, you don't understand what they are. You do kind of feel like that, right? You're just like, why am I doing this? I know I fixed this before. I know I did this before. Like, why do I feel this way? And I think culturally what happens is you get this kind of sense of frustration, and people feel like they're just doing the same thing over and over, and we're not making forward progress in any real, in any real way.
yeah, when lessons aren't documented, every project becomes a new experiment. Teams repeat the same challenges. Leaders, they get frustrated because they see it. They can recognize that without putting their finger on it. But what happens is knowledge then walks out the door when someone leaves. So it's not just about inefficiency. It's the erosion of organizational intelligence.
Yeah. And, back to my comment about tacit knowledge, each of us has our own individual experiences. So from a cultural perspective, each of us experiences the world differently, right? We have completely different backgrounds and upbringings and perspectives and personalities, and all of those things come into play. And then our memories are ours alone. But what we deposit into that kind of tribal knowledge vault in some way is what goes back to the organization. I think sometimes one of the cultural phenomenons that I see happen is people think it's the old school knowledge hoarding, right? I'm going to hoard this knowledge because it's my knowledge, and I'm not going to give it back because I don't want the organization to benefit from this knowledge that I have learned, because otherwise my value will go down if I give that knowledge up. And what really actually happens is when you document and share that knowledge back with the tribe, the whole tribe gets better, which then makes you better individually as well.
Right. Well, we've talked about this in the past, but I'm a big believer in, hiring for the company, rather, like, you want people that can accomplish the role. And there's a lot of people that can accomplish the task and they have those experiences, but somebody who is a good cultural fit for the organization, like finding people that understand this and and want to and realize that, hey, this has a small benefit to my project. And, but overall, if I spend a little extra time on this, it helps all of us get better. It very much is that, that rising tide floats all boats. If we think and do and take action with a perspective towards the greater good of that, it takes a little more of your time. Maybe you're not getting you might even get dinged for taking too long to put the documentation together for it, but it's the right thing so that ultimately we all get better at it. Those are the kind of people that you want to find. That's the kind of culture that you want. Hopefully you have the kind of culture that doesn't penalize people for capturing their knowledge.
Well, yeah, because otherwise you end up, and we've talked about this before, but you end up with kind of that superhero syndrome where basically everybody's knowledge hoarding, everybody's trying to save the day, everybody's focusing on fixing whatever the current problem is, and ultimately everybody just kind of becomes their own individual silo, and ultimately they go down this path of, everybody's kind of out for themselves. And I mean, there's plenty of books and stories and movies about what happens in that situation.
Right. Well, a culture that never records its learning becomes reactive by default. So people spend their days fixing the same issues over and over because there's no shared playbook. That's not agility. That's chaos on repeat.
Yep. Yeah, we see this, at a civilization level. We all study this in school, right? Civilization. And the fact that when we were able
to game Civilization. That's the one the giant heads. Yeah.
Oh my God, yes. When we started being able to put things on paper and we created the printing press and things like that, like institutional knowledge changed us at a civilization level. It took us into the industrial age, right? And I think when we think about this at a corporate level, I don't think people understand culturally the difference, that you can literally foster an era into your organization by doing some of the stuff we're talking about today. Like this is one of those few things in history that is pivotal in terms of maturing, gigantic maturity steps.
Yeah. I think of thinking of the pitfalls of continuing down this path. Having worked at a couple organizations, there's one where I liked the team, I liked what I did, but there's a couple key people that just seem to run around like the chicken with the head cut off. They're just constantly in that panic and panic mode and get other people there. And it's not that they were pushing things off, is that they didn't slow down enough to kind of institutionalize the knowledge. So everything felt like a rush project rather than, hey, we do the same stuff every time. Let's put a checklist together. I'm going down the checklist. We knew this was coming. We prepared for this. And there are some things that we could have done, the order of operations, to improve so that we're not freaking out on Friday or coming in Saturday to get it done because we know the presentation's on Monday. The scariest part of relying on memory is that it feels harmless until it's not. Because everything's fine. It seems fine. I'm fine. You're fine. I like that meme of the dog with its all on
the
fire.
dumpster fire.
Yeah, that's right. But until a key person leaves, that's when the fire starts. Suddenly, half your organization knowledge goes with them. And that's not bad luck, people. It's bad process.
Yeah, so side note, this every year, this gets my goat, Christian. This gets my goat. Every year, when holidays are, right? So for example,
what? No, they spring up. No,
we know when Christmas is going to be. And what cracks me up is I go to stores and there are people literally in line on Christmas Eve. No, so I know this shocks you. I do all my Christmas shopping in like July and October, right?
My wife does that as well, like month in advance.
Then you get to Christmas Eve and I just want to die laughing because there's so many people like standing in line on Christmas Eve. Well, you don't understand, Sharon. I've got to get this done. I'm like, you've known for 364 days this year, just this year, let alone 2, 3, 4 years out, that this is coming. And I think, this kind of it comes across, to your point. It's like, you know what's going to happen. You know who you're going to talk to. You know what's going to happen. You know what's coming up. Why in the world do you start from scratch every single time? How much time does that waste?
It's a missing sales opportunity is for every convenience store, every 7-Eleven that needs to have like a little gift section. It's the last minute gifts. You double the price of them, but you sell a bunch of these small, inexpensive gifts, like the last minute items. I'm telling you, they would sell out. Something that normally goes for $5, you could charge $25 for it. And you would make a killing in the Christmas season.
Yeah, no, ultimately, I do think like the idea of repeating your same mistakes over and over and over and not learning from them and not using them to give. It's not even that you forgot about them. We know we messed that up last time. So I know I bought Christmas presents on Christmas Eve last time. Maybe next year I'll do better. And then you get to Christmas Eve and you're like, dang it, how did it make it to Christmas again? Yeah. If you're not doing something to change that, you're destined to just continue to repeat this. And ultimately, you're not creating anything in your culture or your organization to make that better.
Yeah. To put it into, I've got to be careful too, but with a past company, because I've worked for a couple that have done this, that created a hosted collaboration environment. I'm not going to name any names of companies that are out there. But building this where they went and built this with dozens and then ended up being a couple hundred customers, each of which were custom. And the goal was to build a repeatable service. And so the idea, though, is that if you are treating every customer as a custom install and doing whatever's needed there, you're never going to standardize. You're never going to create that repeatable system. Mm-hmm. And so and I used to say that, like, well, you've got to start with, I'm really, folks, apologies for not just naming names here, but because, there's some still active relationships with some of these companies. So I'm choosing my words. But the idea, though, you go out and you create that vanilla platform first. You've got your repeatable, like, here's what our project management methodology is. It's why Sharon and I always talk about, I don't care what methodology, start with something. Then you go through, you run through a project on a methodology, you go back and you review it and say, okay, this 10-step process, steps 7 and 9 didn't work. We had problems. Let's make tweaks. Okay, we have the new 7, the new 9. Then we run through a project. Okay, now we're going to make some tweaks to 3 and then 7 again. And and each time you get better, it gets faster, it gets more consistent.
Mm-hmm.
You have that cultural learning loop, and you can actually innovate. You can't measure what's not moving forward. You can't measure if you're inconsistent doing things different, the ways that are out there. Like, I've heard people complain like, well, this methodology is too slow, or this doesn't work, this steps, and I just need to do it my way. Document your way against the process. Maybe we should all be doing it your way if it's better, but unless it's documented, unless you might think that it's faster and it might actually be slower. You need to measure it. You need to track it and measure it. And you can't do that if you are not documenting what it is that you're doing and what you're learning.
Yeah. In fact, I think if you think you have an idea for making things better, it's really important that you speak up and that you communicate that, and that, work properly within your organization to try out those changes. In my opinion, any organization that has a good culture is going to be open to trying things that are going to make them better, right? That is, one of the hallmarks of a good organization is that they're open to change. So if you have a good idea, definitely speak up.
Well, when you skip knowledge capture, you're guaranteeing rework. Projects end up reinventing solutions that already exist somewhere in the building because you didn't take the time to go ask the other team, hey, what are the changes in the process? How are you doing this? The cost isn't just time. It's also credibility of that team, that project manager, because teams stop trusting leadership and leadership stops trusting individuals who don't learn from their experiences.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, because as a manager, so on the manager side of things, you're putting all of these things into place for people to try to make their jobs easier, to try to make them more repeatable, to try to make it so they don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. And the flip side of this is if the people who are getting that don't appreciate it, value it, try it on, then all of that effort is a little bit in vain.
Yeah. So Sharon, what are some strategies for overcoming this issue? What would be your approach, especially because we know this is always the case. Rarely do you have that green field, like, hey, we're about to start this and we're going to do it all the right way now at the beginning. No, you're already, knee deep in the muck of the existing projects. And so how do you make a course correction now in the midst of your projects?
I mean, I'm going to say this a little tongue in cheek, but literally record everything. So it's kind of like, so let's go back to I want to have a better budget, right? Or I want to lose weight, or I want to make whatever change it is that you have in life. It's like the advice that you're going to be given is, track everything starting now. You may not know everything before now, but track everything starting now. And it doesn't matter. I love the fact that with like Teams Premium, we can record everything and all of that can get, brought into Copilot for note-taking and things like that. But the idea is record everything, whether that's physically recording, or maybe your organization doesn't allow that, which means you might have to do better note-taking. The idea here is write everything down and capture that information. Don't wait till the end of the project to write it all down, right? Day to day, like start to capture what went right, what went wrong, what can I improve upon? Make a backlog of those things, right? Start it now.
Yeah. No, I love that. Don't wait to the end of a project to capture lessons. I mean, this is something you can do with every major milestone while your memories are still fresh, which is also a great time to go in and do timesheet tracking while it's fresh in your mind. I need to write that down, Sharon. I don't feel like I get enough reminders about that. No, but a 5-minute debrief in Teams around a milestone, it's sometimes worth more than a 3-hour post-mortem discussion after everybody's already moved on. Do it in the moment. Back to that puppy analogy.
Yeah. Well, and also in the moment, more, you can almost problem solve a little bit. So one of the things is, I think sometimes we feel guilty, right? So we're in the middle of doing something, we understand there's a challenge or a roadblock, and we say, oh, I'll take care of that later. And the truth of the matter is, anybody who knows me, I will stop everything that's happening and be like, no, let's do our best to make a small change now and fix it so that we can correct the course a little tiny bit at a time. Because ultimately, I feel like it's not about interrupting the flow of things. It's about making sure that for the rest of the journey, we've corrected the course, even if it's just a little bit. So I think it's that idea of not just writing it down, but also thinking in that moment, are there any quick things I can do to make this a little bit better?
Yeah. A hard part of all of this, Sharon, is making all the knowledge that you're capturing shareable and,
Yes.
and easily accessible. I've got a great quick story for this. So was part of a company we got acquired, a larger company. And the larger company, the first thing they did, so the CEO of the acquiring company did a town hall style across like 5 to 7 offices, however many we had at the time. May have been more than that around the world. And so people were watching this live stream. And so I went out as part of the acquired. We were using then Yammer. This was before Microsoft acquired them, and went out and realized, hey, the company does have a Yammer environment. No one's been in it for a year. And so I said, for the town hall, I just created it. And then I started sharing out to everybody. I still couldn't email everyone in the company. So the people that I knew and said, please share it, and kind of pass it around. And then people started asking questions through the Yammer, through this social collaboration platform, which is now Viva Engage. But Slack and Confluence and Teams, there's a lot of places you can go and do this.
We don't care what tool you guys use.
Whatever it is. But they're capturing it. What's great is that, so lessons learned is that people then started asking, hey, there's a question from such and such. So the problem was that in the room where the CEO was, I was sitting in the room in one location in DC. People were raising their hands and asking questions, but there was a lot of great questions that weren't being answered for the people that were at the other locations. Somebody locally then started saying, hey, such and such in our Bratislava office just asked this question. They're like, oh, great. And answered it then. And people are adding notes in around the questions that are asked, and even answering some of the questions like, oh, that was asked at the beginning of the town hall, and they put in the response to it. 6 months later, 5 months later, we acquired another company, another competitor, and did another town hall. And I came in a little bit late into the room where the CEO was going through a lot of the stuff and the latest of what was happening. And I log into the Yammer environment, into the same town hall discussion from last time. And I could see that others, this is just wonderful that it worked, where I could see that people were pointing the new employees to the conversation and all of the questions and answers from the last time, and new questions were being asked. So they were already utilizing the tool in that way. And I did find myself a couple times afterwards, like, what do we say around here? Like, what's happening around this product line? And, oh, let me go and check and see if that question, yeah, hey, it's all right here out in the Yammer environment. So it needs to be centralized. It needs to be shareable. It needs to be findable. Mm-hmm. And so, now like we have Viva Engage that's integrated into our intranet. And so we could utilize it in that way. So it can become a centralized database. The goal, however, isn't to build a giant database. It's to make knowledge easy to find and use. So you have to keep it simple, make it searchable, and it has to be social. So when sharing lessons feels natural, it's just part of the way that we work, then people naturally and actually do it. They share. They look for opportunities to capture that knowledge, and I should go put that in our knowledge base and then share out that response.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think ultimately what you're trying to say is not just share it out, but also build an opportunity for people to provide feedback as well.
Opportunity. You have to do the hand signal. There's the opportunity. It's always that.
I wish there was a little rainbow that came up.
Yes.
I think I have an AI video that does that, right?
Because knowing's half the battle.
Oh, jeez.
G.I. Joe. Yeah, sorry.
You.
I'm a man of a certain age, so I have to do that. Yeah.
But ultimately, yeah, we want people to be able to we want people to participate, contribute, and provide feedback for things that are working and things that aren't working, so that ultimately we can then incorporate those insights into things.
And you can do that, and people will add more to it also if you reward contributions. And that doesn't have to be cash or anything else. It could just be recognition. Hey, thank you to people that added to this.
Attaboys go a long way, guys. Like, and if you haven't used the praise tool in Teams, it's so much fun.
But also, I mean, that's why a lot of community sites will have leaderboards, like how many people have posted, how many people have answered questions, how many upvotes or likes you may have only answered 3 questions in the last year, but you could still break the record for having the most likes or upvotes of that. So if you can gamify a lot of that process, and that's a reward in itself right there.
Yeah. And then I think the last thing on this is lead by example. And here's the deal, guys. It's so hard to tell people to do things and then not do it yourselves.
No, it's quite easy to do.
It is quite easy to do, but it is difficult to make change in an organization. It's difficult to get people to do things when leadership is not leading by example. And so one of the things that I really like to work with organizations at a strategic level is decide the right way to do things, and then you do it. And this, number one, makes sure that leadership is leading by example. And number two, if leadership doesn't want to do it, maybe it's not the right way to do it.
Right. And that would be a real easy tweak. If there's like, hey, we're not doing it. Why? Based on my experience. That's why we document the process.
I don't want to have to do that.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, thinking about best practices, I mean, we were talking about standardizing those post-project reviews and this structure, the methodology. Here's our approach. This is what we've learned. If it's too slow, well, then carve out the pieces that are slowing you down, but you still have the rest of the structure. Here's our fast process. This is what we do and I've actually worked in organizations that had their standard process. This is what we do. And then we have an escalated path. And if the escalated path is chosen and the leadership team is aware of this, then here's where we cut corners. They're understood. There's a process for that. And so it comes with certain agreements, like, being told it's like, a 007. It's just like, well, we know if you get caught that we know nothing about you, like you're gone,
Did you know in the stand-up, there's this section for roadblocks that you already discuss that I cannot tell you how often I participate in a stand-up inside or outside my own organization where no roadblocks, no roadblocks, no roadblocks, no roadblocks. Well, how do we get better if we don't know what the roadblocks are, right? That's a quick and easy way to improve your lessons learned, is to start making people tell me a roadblock and how you solved it.
Yeah. There's a comment to one of our video shorts out there, I think on TikTok, for anybody that watches out there. We're starting to post more from this series out there.
We're starting to get, young and hip with the jive.
Oh, we're so hip. It hurts. Yeah. Which is a song by the band ABC, which is from the early 80s. So I just really dated myself for knowing all of that. Martin Fry, F-R-Y. Okay. Anyway, it's so somebody made a comment, basically said like, well, project managers, essentially the point was like project managers don't get to choose. They get forced to do, to move forward. Like there's no time to document if they're told to go and do this. I said, well, the response to any of that, like this, is part of your process, your best practices. Document that and make it transparent. I would always remove myself. This goes back to my favorite word. One of my favorite words in project management is to approach it clinically. So think of it like I need to remove myself personally from it. It's like, hey, that's your decision to make on this, but here are the impacts. Here's the risk. You took it. I've documented that you told me to go and take this path. So when the scope explodes, when we miss that date, because the decision was yours, and there's clear documented trail of where that came from. And so that should be part of the process as well. That's why I love having an escalated path where you basically sign it off. It's like when you book travel on Expedia, but then don't pay the extra $25 to insure your trip against, whatever. And
A
so
lot of people are probably frustrated about that right now.
I think that they are. Now would be a good time to pay the $25, folks. Yeah. Oh, there's no pilot to fly the plane today. Oh, but that's something, just you document that stuff, you make it transparent, and that should be a best practice as well. Think of documentation as part of delivery. It's not a chore after the fact. It needs to be baked into the workflow. Every sprint, every review, every wrap up. Over time, it stops feeling like extra work and starts feeling like how great teams operate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and you hear me say this a lot. I'm like, thanks, Past Sharon, because I love it when I do something like this and I say, oh, this would be easier if I had a little checklist, or this would be easier if I had a task card, or this would be easier. And I'm like, I'm just going to go write that up real quick. And then I drop it somewhere and I forget about it. And then the next time it comes around, I pull it up and I'm like, oh, that was nice of me. Right? Because what we really like is, once we've got it, it doesn't have to be anything crazy and complex and complicated to be helpful. And so just by doing that little task, now I've converted that into something that is more systematic next time. And the next time I pull it up, I'm going to be like, hey, that's kind of cool.
You're right. Early on, we were talking about, how AI is being used too against this. To be able to just, by default have, like, we use Copilot, Microsoft technology, that is part of every Teams meeting. It's captured, the note taking there. And so when you could even pause and just say, hey, want to take note here. We need to change this step in our methodology, our process right here. The note taker captures it. It's right there. You can add it as you're reading later into the notes there. It's all captured. So when you go back and do the post-mortem, you can run the AI to say, pull up any notes, any side conversations around this, the methodology. Where are there opportunities to improve? It'll pick up on all the notes, on all the comments, all the side chats that were relevant to that topic, and say, here's 5 suggestions for how you can reduce the time for delivery on this methodology for the next project. So AI is changing the game here. Using Copilot, any other tools, there's a lot of different meeting AI tools, solutions that are out there. You can start to surface patterns across dozens of projects instantly. But the magic only works if the data exists. So AI can't learn what you never wrote down, what you never recorded. So there are just steps that you need to take to start automating there. So I love that. For calls to action, Sharon, I would say that first and foremost, capture those insights, record it, leverage AI. That's a great call to action to go. If you're not yet using AI for that purpose and thinking, oh, it's too expensive.
Dude, it's like one of the best things to get out of it. Best ROI you're going to find.
It's incredibly valuable there. But the other call to action is to establish a repository, to go and look at whatever that is. I'd be surprised, no matter what size organization, if you don't already have one of these tools, Teams or Slack or Confluence or anything that's out there, to capture all of those shared notes. Do it.
Yeah. I think ultimately, the biggest thing is just do it. I start identifying on a regular basis, whether that's every day, every week, at milestones, what's a roadblock I'm running into and how can I fix it quickly and easily, right? Start there. And then like you were saying earlier, you will start to do that and it will become part of the fabric of who you are, who your team is, what your organization is, and it will only get bigger and better from there. But do something about it. Identify it, do something about it on a regular basis. Yeah.
At your next kickoff meeting, take at least 5 minutes to review past lessons. It really is the cheapest insurance lesson that you'll ever buy, because history only repeats itself when you refuse to document it.
Well, yep. And if you can continuously improve, then theoretically you're going to keep doing the same thing, but it'll get a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better.
Yep.
It's how rivers move.
And then you'll reach perfection, and everyone will be translated, and it's a whole thing. So yeah, for those that from a religious perspective, but that is it. I know we went a little bit long for this week's episode, but please be sure to follow us and subscribe out on our new YouTube. You can find us on YouTube /@ProjectFailureFiles. And Sharon, always a pleasure. Next Monday, maybe same time.
Yeah. See you next Monday. Let's do it again.
Because what else are we going to do on Mondays? But this again and again. So.
Yeah.
See you later,
Thanks, everybody. Bye.